Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. In our continuing series with members of the Colorado General Assembly, we have 3 members of the House of Representatives and 1 august state senator joining us today. Kevin's already laughing. Dan Thurlow. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Aaron. Great to be here.
Great having you on the show. And Jonathan Singer, not far from my neighborhood.
No.
You're in Longmont, aren't you?
Yeah, it's part of the same county.
Yeah, Boulder. Well, I'm in Boulder County. You're in Boulder County.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. I'm actually on the edge, so Weld County is my immediate neighbor bordering my farm. Kevin Lundberg, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. It's good being here. I'm actually on the northern side of things with Larimer County. So Boulder County is those guys to the south for me.
Yeah, well,
and the left.
Yeah, south and left.
Absolutely, yeah.
Always. And Dan Pabon, thank you so much for being here, the Speaker Pro Tem of the Colorado House of Representatives.
Aaron, it's great to be with you this morning. And, just so you have a reference from my district, Mile High Stadium is right in the center of my district. So
all right, that's where we start. That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So if some Broncos walk through the studio, you won't.
I'll have to adhere to my constituents.
All right. Now, and you pronounce it's Pabon, right?
Pabon.
All right, Pabon. Dan Pabon. Okay, so we've had a number of shows with members of the General Assembly over the year, and especially this, at the end of 2015. I thought it'd be fun to let you all pick the topics, and although I have many questions for you, I want to start off with, what are you looking forward to in the 2016 session, in the new session of the General Assembly? And what would you personally like to accomplish? So, Representative Thurlow, I'm going to start with you. Dan, what's at the top of your list?
Well, thank you, Aaron. I'll be glad to kick that off. I know it could be a varied discussion, but just a little background. I come from Grand Junction, and I come out of a manufacturing business where we spent 40 years trying to continuously improve our product and our service to our customers. And my premise for state government is I don't think you can make government work like a business, but I think you can make all organizations work better through process. There's all kinds of them, but the one we use is called lean manufacturing, and what I would like to do is try to start a lean Colorado movement. And the way you start it is with little things. You start with some little victories where you can find places where you save either the taxpayers' money, make the government more efficient, make things work better for private businesses. If you can get some little victories there and then get people within the organization to appreciate that, because everybody wants to succeed, and they'll start looking for other things, and if you can get that kind of a culture going, you can change an organization and make things better over time for everyone.
Well, it's a fascinating issue, because certainly there are people in the state who will tell you, we have an incredibly lean state government, a very efficient state government. Trying to save money at the state level is going to be like squeezing, blood from a rock or turnip or whatever the case may be.
We still can't afford the blood. So.
And there you go. And then there are other people, though, who say, there are 2 things we can do. One, there's certainly things we could do more efficiently, and 2, maybe there are things the state is doing, and even though they're doing a good job of them, maybe we don't need to do them. So, just based on what you've seen and your experience, do you have any examples of where you think we could do things better, or where we maybe don't need to do things at all?
Yeah, I do, Aaron. I've got lots of examples. I don't think we have time for all of them.
Give me a couple.
I've isolated a couple. Like, we've got a series of bills that we passed in 2010. They were called the Dirty Dozen tax bills. They created sales taxes on about 12 categories that were exempt previously. Part of the bill required that we report quarterly to the General Assembly on the revenue raised from those tax bills. Well, what's happened, if anyone has ever read the report, which there's probably few and far between people that have read the report, what happens is the sales tax form that we use does not contain the information that the bills ask for. So we've spent 5 or 6 years now sending quarterly reports to legislators. It's a 5-page report. I've actually read it. It says in 5 pages that we can't give you this information. I think if we can repeal that requirement, 1, it doesn't hurt anybody. 2, it saves not a huge amount of money, but it saves one person in the Department of Revenue a process every quarter that they go through, and it eliminates one little thing. When I found that and I brought it to the Department of Revenue people immediately said, oh, here's a couple more that you should consider that are not necessary. And by the way, one person used to work at the Department of Transportation. She said, go look over there because there are several more over there. So that's what I'm talking about. That's continuous improvement. If you get people at the level of the people doing the job excited about it, they will go out and find the things that make the organization more productive and more efficient.
All right, great. Jonathan, what would you like to see happen?
Oh, well, I think Dan is right. I don't know if we have enough time, but, if I were to sort of focus on the top 3 issues, I think the biggest thing going on is that even though we're in an economic recovery, a lot of people still aren't feeling the benefits of that. And so just recently I had a bill come out that basically is looking at creating tax incentives for working families to be able to access affordable daycare or affordable childcare. I mean, this is a huge thing, and hopefully we'll be able to do this because the cost of daycare and childcare is really putting people out of work. And that's not the whole point of this. It's really to give kids a first step. The other big thing that I'll be always looking at is growing our marijuana process here in Colorado. It's one of those things that we're on the edge of the tipping point of the nation, and so we have to do it right. We have to do it responsibly, and so I'm going to continue my focus on that as well.
Okay, and I want to hear more about that. Certainly that is something being discussed nationally. Anywhere I go in the country, that's one of the first questions I get asked in terms of what's happening in Colorado, and has the whole population gone up in smoke or whatever the case may be. Kevin, how about you? What are you looking at?
Well, this will be my 14th session, so I've been through this rodeo a few times, and I've watched a lot of it occur. And I'd like to start with just the principle as to why in the world we're there in the first place. If you go back to the Declaration of Independence and you look at what they said about government, they said government is established to secure the rights of the individual citizen. And what I find is we're trying to invent some sort of a social system and an economic encouragement mechanism and put in complete medical programs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like us to get back and focus on that target of a limited government, which is to secure our rights, first and foremost. When it comes to get rid of programs, I'll give you a bigger one, and that's the healthcare exchange. I've been on the oversight committee for that for the last 4.5 years now, and I don't find that it accomplishes anything that wasn't being accomplished through the medical insurance brokers. The only thing it effectively does is it puts more and more people into Medicaid, which is available through the county offices. But let me boil this down to smaller bite-sized pieces.
I want to talk, maybe when we come back, I want to talk about the health exchange because I'm fascinated by the fact that it's costing us millions of dollars a year. Every policyholder, anyone who has health insurance, is actually paying for that, usually unwittingly, and what, 90% or more aren't using the exchange.
I'll be glad to cover that. I've got a bill coming up on it, too.
And then I'm really interested in looking at the cost per policy of the exchange, which my estimate is something on the order of $300 for every policy that they've issued, and actually it may be 10 times that based on some of the budgets I've seen. So I do want to talk about that. I want to give Dan the last word of the segment.
So I think our role is to build a better Colorado where everyone belongs. And here's what I mean by that. Right now, we have a economic growth that is historic in Colorado. We have more people coming in, living here, getting jobs, enjoying the mountains. At the same time, our infrastructure is crumbling. We don't have any ability to repair our roads. We don't have any ability to fund more folks who want to go and use our K through 12 system, students who want to go to school. And the problem is we have an economic knot on our budget. And we are at the same time experiencing unprecedented growth, seeing arbitrary restriction on the amount of revenues that we can spend towards helping everyone get an opportunity in Colorado. And I think that's the issue we need to address the most. This session is going to be the one that's on the front page on the first day about the budget and how we balance it and how we do it to make sure that there's priorities that everyone can recognize and respect.
All right, wow, some differing opinions. This is going to be fun. We're going to be right back with our guests in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. For information about the program, who our upcoming guests and topics are, and ways you can participate, please go to our website. That's harbertv.com. And most of all, thanks for watching.
I'm Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland.
Hi, I'm Jim Cameron, Director of Avatar.
I'm Christina Johnson, former Undersecretary of Energy.
Hi, I'm Oliver Stone.
Hi, I'm Mike Peters. I'm the creator of Mother Goose and Grimm.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
I would encourage you to watch the Aaron Harber Show. It's good fun.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show because he's a really cool guy.
Please watch the Aaron Harber Show, on which I do appear.
I want you to watch the Aaron Harber Show. Grimmy watches it every day.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter and find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Your opinions, ideas, suggestions, and criticisms related to guests, topics, questions, or the host are welcome. Please send an email to producer@harbertv.com. Welcome back to the show. This is part one of our special two-part series with members of the General Assembly, Dan, Jonathan, Kevin, and Dan. All right, so Kevin, you were talking about the health exchange. So I want to hear a little bit more about this because what's the budget, the 2016 budget for the health exchange? Do you know offhand?
Well, initially they told us it would take about $26 million a year to administer the health exchange.
And now isn't it double that?
It's about double that. Yeah. When they came back this year, they said, well, now we know what it really takes, and it's going to take us about $50 million.
Okay, and how many policies? Is it like they process about 150,000 policies?
Yeah, about 150,000. They'll tell you they've got that many people in there, but that's actually the sum total of who signed up. Not all of them stayed on, so maybe 120,000 are currently a part of the
All right, well, let's give them 150. So you're talking over $300. We're paying as taxpayers over $300 per policy.
There are several ways they fund that. They're trying to find that money. First, it was federal grants that provided that, and they burned through about, I don't know, close to $300 million to set everything up. But now they're pretty much on their own, and so there are two systems to tax people who have medical insurance policies. One is a monthly rate of a specific amount, and the other one is a rather curious thing where...
And that's on every health insurance.
That's on every medical insurance policy
whether
in the
you
state.
go through the exchange or not.
Right. The other one is also charged against everyone, but it's figured by how many people have signed up on the exchange, and it's... I think this coming year it's going to be 3.5% of the premiums, but that's not supposed to be paid for by the people just with those premiums. So they charge the insurance companies, who then spread the cost among everybody. That's going to be, they figure, about $10 million this year, and they're anticipating it being $30 million in 3 years, and that is the cost, or is the one fee structure. They call it a fee, I call it a tax. But that's the one that
I'm sure the courts would call it a fee.
You know what? When I charge you for something in order to provide a service to somebody else, that's called a tax. But we'll see. I've actually got a bill that says let's take it to the people and let them figure out, is this a tax they want to continue?
All right, so if we were to abolish the exchange, which right now is the only way that people who want to take advantage of federal tax credits can get those tax credits, what would happen? And I want the rest of you to jump in. Dan, please.
It's a little bit ironic because if Senator Lundberg wants to get rid of the state health care exchange, that means that the federal government will then come in and issue these policies and these programs. So I don't know about you, but I would much rather prefer our state to have control and oversight over this system than the federal government any day.
Would the federal operation charge similar fees?
Oh, sure. Not? I mean, this is all...
So we wouldn't escape the cost.
Exactly. We would just have a different level of control, the federal government over the state government.
Well, hang on, though, because the state exchange is subject subject to all the rules that the feds are putting in place. That was the argument given back when Senate Bill 200 of several years ago passed that put it in place. But as being on that committee that's overseeing this, and having been on it from its inception, I can tell you that it isn't going to make much difference there. What I find offensive to the system is they're accomplishing nothing more than what medical insurance brokers have been doing all along. And as a matter of fact, 40% of the brokers or of the business they have goes through the brokers anyway.
The difference, though, is that the insurance brokers before were not doing things like covering pre-existing conditions and covering things like preventive care, prenatal care, all these different pieces.
No, that has nothing to do with the brokers.
Well, they were selling
That's
the product.
insurance
They were selling the products that the insurance companies were providing them. What the healthcare benefit exchange says is you have to have these minimum requirements in order to be eligible to sell within the exchange, and that's why we're going to need this oversight as part of it. So if you want to you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, or maybe you do, but I think most,
if it's an ugly baby,
most Coloradans,
Exactly.
we would never throw any babies out with the bathwater. Jonathan and I have 2 little babies. We would never do that.
All right, but wait a minute. For example, the requirement you were talking about in terms of coverage, well, that's a Affordable Care Act
Right.
and Obamacare requirement. So any policy today has to have those preventive requirements and benefits in it, regardless of whether or not you have an exchange. Am I wrong about that?
You are correct, and just put the record straight here. The exchange does nothing more than what has been done in the past. It's just that they've added one more layer. Yeah, I would get rid of the state exchange and then the federal exchange. I'd like to see that one go away as well, because this can be handled on the private market. It already has been. As a matter of fact, here's one other fact people need to realize is less than 2% of the population in Colorado actually take advantage of any of these federal subsidies. So over 98% of the people of Colorado are already operating without anything that the exchange theoretically gives. And all they end up giving is just the little tag to say to the IRS, okay, they can get the subsidy.
So would there be any difference, Dan, in terms of benefits to Coloradans if let's say we went Kevin's route. Let's say we didn't have the state exchange, and let's say we didn't have the federal exchange. All policies would be subject to having the kind of benefits that Obamacare requires, which I think you and I happen to agree. It's great that there are no limits on care. It's great that you can cover your kid until he or she's 26 and things like that. And the preventive, that you can get vaccinations, and that's automatically parts of your policy. So if all that were kept, but you were going through private brokers, would there be any net difference, assuming you could still on your tax form get the same tax credit you can get going through the exchange?
Well, if you want to re-engineer the entire premise,
I don't.
how many hours do we have on this show?
I do.
But the bottom line is, we want to facilitate as many people to get insurance, right? That's the premise of all of this. So before, we were having a lot of people who had good health, not getting insurance. We had folks who had young infants and mothers who were not getting insurance. And now this has proliferated coverage for everyone. And I think, coming back to what I think our job is, we build a Colorado where everyone belongs. That's what this is about.
Okay, Dan, I'm going to let you have the last word on this.
Aaron, and I would ask Dan also,
by the way, there is a ballot issue on the 2016 election. Hold on, there's a ballot issue on the 2016 election ballot, which will get rid of the exchange, and which will get rid of Obamacare if it passes. And I'm not proposing that it should, because that would be universal health coverage, and you would eliminate both of those
If you
systems.
like Obamacare, you're going to love this one. It's on steroids.
All right,
So Aaron, why are we afraid of re-engineering the whole system? The whole thing's obviously not working, and it's getting worse as we go along. There was an interesting term a couple weeks ago in the presidential debate. John Kasich threw it out. It was called disintermediation of the marketplace. I had to go look it up. But what it's talking about is in a market, and there are great examples of it, where Sam's Club and Walmart and those people have disintermediated a market. They took a whole bunch of middlemen out of the market for groceries, and they made it better for everyone. We can buy cheaper groceries now than we used to be able to. In healthcare, we've gone exactly the opposite direction. 150 years ago, you had a doctor and a patient. The doctor provided the service, the patient paid him. Then we created insurance. Then we created walls around the state's insurance programs, and that made it worse. Now we've created another level called an exchange, and at every step, it creates another cost. Whoever, whether it's for-profit or government or whatever, it's a cost. So why don't we think about disintermediating the healthcare market, going back to a market? And there are some examples of that being done. There's a doctors group in Grand Junction that has set up a program where you pay them a monthly fee. If you're not sick, you still pay them. But if you're sick, you go in and you get all the coverage you need. If we could develop those kinds of options, because that's what we have to do, is get all the middlemen out of the system that we're now talking about, where government takes a little, the exchange takes a little, the insurance brokers take a little, the insurance companies take a little, and we have no controls on the cost. So I think we should start thinking about those kinds of
All right, so
solutions.
let's say you did that. How about Dan's point?
But yeah, so here's what happened when you took a labor oversight over to this. The insurance companies, if someone had asthma, they would be barred from getting insurance for essentially the rest of their life. I mean, these kind of basic pre-existing conditions can't be controlled by the market. The market is not the right regulator for this particular piece. Preventive care, mammograms, all these different essential ingredients of what we call.
But what if you kept those? What if you kept those and did what Dan did?
Well, I'm not sure that you could do. I'm not sure you could do both.
Well, sure.
Maybe you can.
Well, the federal law already requires those
and I think we could. Again, it's not that we're afraid of re-engineering anything. You know, if government can be smarter, sharper, better, we should totally look at that. Because there's no Democratic healthcare solution or Republican healthcare solution, in my opinion. This is about how we cover the most amount of people for the cheapest cost. Because when you have the United States of America, the greatest country in the world, we spend more on healthcare than any other country in the world. There's a problem there, and I don't think it's because of Obamacare. That was a statistic that existed far before this.
I think it's been an accumulation of things. It's all those things, and Obamacare is the last layer that we've put on it. And every one of them is making it worse.
Okay, well, when we come back, we've got to take a quick break. When we come back, though, I think the point that I'd like to address, since we're talking about this issue, is how do we, under a free market system, make sure everybody in the country has some kind of coverage, has health insurance. So I'm going to let our two Republican guests tackle that when we come back after this break.
Glad to.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. We depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's and world's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to allow us to work for you. To find out more or to make a donation, please go to dmefd.org. Thanks for watching the show and for your support. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter and find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scenes photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Your opinions, ideas, suggestions, and criticisms related to guests, topics, questions, or the host are welcome. Please send an email to producer@harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is part one, our final segment of part one on our special two-part series with members of the General Assembly. So we're talking about health care. So I guess my question really goes to kind of the more philosophical issue that Dan raised in terms of goals and objectives. And that is, if you believe every Colorado citizen should have health care and should be able to go and get medical attention when needed, how do we do that under a free market system? So I'm going to let you have first shot of that, Kevin, and Dan, I'm going to let you bring up the rear on that question.
Well, the first thing is you don't think that you can create a one-size-fits-all system, which is what Obamacare really does put into place. What we need is the ability to allow citizens to choose what is best for themselves.
But what if I can't afford?
Okay.
What do I do?
There are several things. There is Medicaid that is available for those who are on the bottom rung of the economic ladder.
What if I'm in the middle?
Okay,
where
if you're in the middle, Colorado actually had a pretty good program in place called Cover Colorado, but we stripped all the funding from that. That allowed anybody to go buy medical insurance at a competitive rate. I won't say it was the least expensive, but if you're in that middle income area and you need something and you have pre-existing, it was available. And it did, but here's what we did. We stripped all the funding from Cover Colorado in order to pay the administrative costs for the healthcare exchange. I'd take that one and put it back. There are other things that are out there. I'm very grateful to say that you can get a personal exemption from the Obamacare requirements if you go through faith-based medical cost-sharing programs, and there are a couple of big ones and a lot of little ones around the country.
Yeah, we were talking about Samaritan. My sister.
Yeah, Samaritan Ministries. That's an example of that.
My sister and brother-in-law.
We need more of those options. We need to fortify the HSA system.
Does that do you avoid the tax?
You avoid the individual mandate, and if you had another program, I'd tell you how that happened, because it actually started with a little phone conversation I had years ago. And now I'm grateful to say that there are some options, but we need more options for people rather than thinking we can design something in Washington, D.C. that fits everybody.
All right, Dan, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to comment on that.
Well, Aaron, thank you. It's not very much of a different comment. My premise is exactly the same, is that choice is good, options are good, and we could easily set up programs like I talked about where you have a direct doctor-patient relationship. And you're right, those are going to work. I think the market will work, Dan, very well for the healthy people. And then secondly, I think it'd be easy to set up a term similar to a major medical policy where the people with pre-existing conditions are now covered by the government. Maybe not even have an insurance middleman, but there's a pre-existing condition level. And if you're eligible for that, that's what you get.
Put them on Medicaid or whatever.
And if you're not, you enter into one of these agreements with the doctor group, and you might have this one is good and this one's bad, and that's all going to work itself out with the market over time.
Well, and the free market exists today. I can go to any doctor I want. I don't, without insurance, and say I will pay you or negotiate a payment and give you cash for your service. I can do that today. There's nothing stopping anyone from doing that today, right?
It's just that you've got to pay for everything else on top of that.
Well, I mean,
we have to get the other
I'm
costs out of the system. That's the disintermediation part, is you have to get rid of all these other things that we've created along the way, and in order to wring the cost out of the system.
Last comment, you get it.
Well, I guess, again, health insurance is a practical matter for individuals. 90% of Coloradans get it through their employer. So we're talking about the 10% of the population. We expanded Medicaid in Colorado to cover some of these folks, much to the chagrin of many members of the General Assembly who are completely against it. So you can't at the same time espouse the solution and in the next breath attack the solution. And I think what we're trying to do here is find a system that everyone can easily access and get covered.
All right, that's the end of part one of our two-part series. We'll be back with more. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.